Hello and welcome to A Spoken Mess. I'm joined with Torey.
My name is Torey.
Yes.
My name is Torey. I am one of the three co-hosts of our weekly podcast, Soft Spoken, and I was delighted to be here today with you, Allie. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure having someone who's worked in the radio business and as a voice actor to be able to join me on an audio platform on my podcast.
I would have to say so. Yeah, and certainly likewise with an aspiring voice actor. It's a tough business to get into. You know, the voices, they don't wear out over time. They're not like athletes, where they retire at 30. They stay working well into their 60s and 70s. So it can certainly be a tricky tricky profession to break into. That's why I do insurance work now, Allie. But yeah, so I wish you the best in your voice acting dreams and aspirations. That's terrific. I did work in radio for several years prior to doing the podcast, both on the AM and FM platform here in the States. And you name it. I mean, top 40, rock, country, AM radio. Of course, that's predominantly talk radio here in the States. But yeah, I did a whole mess of work throughout all the facets of the radio business. Of course, we mentioned the voice acting, the editing, the production. And we even did some on-site locations, which I thought were pretty neat. When I was working for the rock radio station, there was we did Jimmy Buffett night. I'm sure you're aware of Jimmy Buffett. You know, Cheeseburger in Paradise. You know, the whole Parrot Head thing.
I don't actually. Is that an American thing?
I'll tell you, I got to be honest with you, Ollie. I'm a little surprised that you don't know Jimmy Buffett. I'm certainly not offended, but he is like the quintessential old man with a guitar on a beach type music. I mean, if you can visualize that, you've pretty much heard every Jimmy Buffett song ever. If you want to look him up on Spotify, by all means do so. I don't think that you may like him. I don't know. I could be wrong, but being a young man like yourself, I can't imagine he would tickle you that much.
Oh no, I love all sorts of music. Back to like Bob Dylan. All sorts of music. I'm surprised that I haven't heard of him myself. Is he similar to Bob Dylan, or is it more of a country sort of tone?
You can definitely make the connection to country. I would say Bob Dylan is probably more of the whole like psychedelic ilk, of that whole sort of, late 60s, early 70s sort of, do acid and play the guitar type scene. Right. Jimmy Buffett, I would put more in the sort of like very island themed, very vacation-y themed. For example, one of his hit songs is, the Cheeseburger in Paradise, which, is it's all about him, eating cheeseburgers on a beach, passing out, drinking on a beach. It's a real beachy, type scene and a real, type, vacation-y type flavor. I mean, but by all means, give him a try. He's not my cup of tea, per se, not my favorite. But when I was working with the radio station, reeling this back in, they had the bike night. We had a motorcycle bike night where, there would be throngs and throngs of motorcycles, and we would do live broadcastings on the air while at bike night, it was Jimmy Buffett bike night at this particular restaurant in northern Pennsylvania. But yeah, I mean, just to wrap up the radio experience, I'm out of it now, sadly, with the exception of the podcast. But it's a fun business to get into. You can certainly have a lot of fun, but it is incredibly different from putting together a podcast. The restrictions on radio are hard. If there's an ad break and you don't play that ad, you don't get paid. That's an issue. Whereas podcasts, I think you and I could talk for hours here, my friend.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. It's whatever comes to mind, whatever keeps the conversation going. Whereas I assume on radio, it's possibly a bit more structured also.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Definitely. That's a very good word for it. Yeah, I mean, it's, there's a hard ad break, with whatever 33 at the bottom of the hour or whatever the case may be, and it better be there, or you're going to lose your gig. And I know you made the comment earlier about the dead airspace in podcasts, and I was super nervous and going crazy over this dead airspace in our own podcast in Soft Spoken, of course. And I come to realize, and I come to find out that is very much a part of the program. And that's something that I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around, coming from my experience in the radio industry. So there's some growing pains, of course, just like anything else. But yeah, we really enjoy doing it. We're really happy. I'm really happy to be on your show here today.
Oh, thank you. I'm really happy that you can join me. So you were saying that the way you edit the podcast, you sort of feel like you need to make it perfect in a sense, like there's no dead air. If there's any stuttering or stammering, it has to cut out.
I do, yeah. I was in charge of editing. I want to say maybe the first half a dozen or so episodes that we put together, and it was brought in. And full disclosure, I never listened to a podcast prior to producing my own.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah, I know it was crazy, right? And I listened to talk radio predominantly while I'm in the car. So it seems sort of what's the word I'm looking for here, but it doesn't seem like something that I should be, given my history and given where I'm coming from. I should be more into podcasts than what I am now. But that's the honest to goodness truth. I have not listened to one single solitary podcast prior to producing my own and listening to it. But yeah, I mean, so after editing those first 6 or so episodes, I come to find out, and I was told by one of my colleagues who is a podcast fanatic. He listens to them all the time. Of course, him and I and another fellow, we do those together. And he said, "Torey, you got to relax on the editing." And I couldn't believe it. I mean, that just struck me as so bizarre. But now that I'm listening to more and I'm becoming more involved in the whole podcast scene, he's 100% right. He is absolutely correct that some of the stuttering and the stammering and the dead airspace and these things, sometimes they can lead to a nice comedic effect, which, I never would have guessed in a million years.
Yeah, totally. It feels more natural in a way, like you're actually sitting with a group of friends talking rather than something that's been constructed and put together.
You're 100, and that's exactly the way it was described to me. That is exactly the way it was described to me. And boy, I don't know. I don't know if I just don't think highly of myself or highly enough of myself, but I think, who in the hell would want to listen to me, Allie?
Hopefully my listeners. And yours.
Well, yeah, right, yeah, of course. We have some following, but yeah. So that totally took me off guard. I was not expecting that at all. But again, not listening to other podcasts, even very professional ones, with a really high production value, they leave all that stuff in there too. And I guess that's the nature of the beast, I suppose.
Yes, for sure. It must just be a huge part of it. Joe Rogan, I think he might be either the most famous or at least one of the most famous podcasters. Apart from toilet breaks, he posts the raw thing. And if he edits something and people notice it, they comment about it and they're angry, like, geez, what's happened to the raw thing? Because it feels like he's becoming a sort of fake being to the listeners.
Wow. Yeah. Just coming from a background in radio, that just sounds raw audio is something that you run from. I mean, I don't want to say that you would run from, but from a production standpoint, from a finished product standpoint, wow. I mean, for the raw product to be the finished product is truly, wild. I mean, that's wild to me. That's something I'm having a tough time understanding and really digesting. But hey, I suppose if it works for Joe Rogan, it'll be good enough for me, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I've never thought of it that way. The aspect of the radio and using the raw product and running away from it, because it's the same with films. Like if you shot a film in one take, then we were like, yeah, we're just going to use the raw thing. It'll be like, whoa, you're not going to edit anything, and there will be huge gaps and pauses, and they choose specific clips from the 10 takes or so, but to not cut at a specific point, it would be surreal. And for podcasts to, I think they're one of the only media out there where you don't cut it. It's very surreal. I never thought of it in that way before.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I certainly wouldn't sit and watch a movie that, you know, had bloopers and, you know, the main actor sneezing or coughing or whatever the case may be. Of course not. And by the same token, I wouldn't listen to a radio program that was structured in the same way. But for whatever reason, podcast, that is from what I understand, and that was news to me that you just told me about Joe Rogan's show and the editing and people calling him out on it. But I never thought people would be clamoring for the raw audio, for the rawness quite as much. That is so counterintuitive to what I've learned. But hey, you know, I just got to run with it. Just got to zip my lip and let people who know what the hell they're talking about, let them do their thing, and I just follow the program.
Totally. Sometimes you just have to, as painful as it might be for a procedure. I found that recently. I did a podcast a few days ago, and I tried to make it very conversational. And well, it was conversational in the sense that it was too relaxed, like it was just two friends talking, and I didn't upload this one. And I think possibly the skill in podcasting comes with making it so informative and entertaining, or whatever the aim of your podcast is, in the moment when you're recording, so that you don't have to edit it to be interesting or entertaining. So it's all very instinctive and improvised in the moment.
Proactive, on the spot editing. Wow, that is one hell of a concept. And I'm not sure if that's a skill that can be practiced. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's interesting. I thought it could. Like if I do 1,000 podcasts, surely it will be better than the first one. But I suppose if you're the sort of person, or not you specifically, but if an individual is the sort of person that isn't so great at conversation or being improvised on the spot, then it could be something very difficult to pick up that has to come naturally.
Yeah. Maybe it's a delightful mixture of both. That one is a tough call, but I think that you sort of nailed it on the head. I mean, not only does that take a lot of work off the back end, off of whoever's doing the production, whoever's doing the editing. I mean, that would certainly be a great way to go about managing a podcast. The key is execution. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can keep that in your brain for the whole show. But I think, of course, execution is everything. You still with me, Ollie? I'm terribly sorry. Someone's calling me from work, but I took the day off. So, yeah.
No, it's all cool. No worries. You can take the call if you'd like, and I can just babble for however long.
No. I took the day off. That my time is yours, my friend.
Oh, fabulous. Nice. Awesome. You were saying you went into voice acting as well.
I did, yeah. I did a little bit, and I say voice acting. It was mainly recording copy for various advertising and things like that to be aired on the show, or excuse me, on the radio on the various networks I mentioned earlier. But yeah, just some different product stuff. I can't even remember it. It was so long ago. But yeah, I would write the copy and then record it and get it all edited up, and send it out.
Right.
And it was a fantastic experience. Yeah. So it wasn't voice acting in the sense like a Disney movie would be voice acted. It wasn't cartoony in that sense. It was more of delivering information, whether it be for advertisements or, car cruises or, like a Jimmy Buffett night that I was mentioning before, things like that, a little bit more on the informational side, less entertainment.
So for those sort of shows, I assume you have to have very clear diction, great projection, so that you can be heard and it's actually enjoyable to listen to your voice.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, you need to speak very, very clearly. Make sure all the consonants as you speak are being able to be heard, are audible. Thankfully, when you're in a professional studio or radio studio, you have every gizmo and gadget that you can possibly imagine. So in the event you screw up a couple of takes, very much unlike the podcast, like we were talking about before, you have the ability to do it, 15, 16, 17 times before you get it right, which I like, of course, more so than, the one take on the podcast. You got to make sure you get it right. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, the diction has to be there. You need to speak, of course, with a certain level of enthusiasm. You need to convey that what you are talking about, even though you may hate it, you may despise it, like me with Jimmy Buffett. I wouldn't listen to Jimmy Buffett if I was blacked out drunk. But if I'm talking about Jimmy Buffett and I want people to come out to bike night and have chicken wings and listen to me and do all these good things, I need to speak with a level of enthusiasm to make people excited. And the radio is such an interesting medium, or podcasting for that matter, is such an interesting medium where there's no visual. Unlike TV or YouTube or heck, even Facebook, Instagram, these types of things, there's a visual aspect to that. So when you're in radio, when you are restricted to just your voice, you have to make up for that. You certainly have to compensate for that. And the best way that I found to do so is just to put that pep in your step, put that firecracker, under your rear end, so to speak, and get excited, and get excited about it. Let's instill some excitement. Let's talk about this in a way that, that gets people ramped up. And that has worked for me in the past.
So throwing all of your energy into it in that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you want people to show up, if you don't want people to turn the dial on you, you got to keep the intensity up. You got to let them know that this is exciting stuff and you better be there.
Do you ever think the same applies for podcasting? So when you're having conversation, keeping that energy high?
Absolutely. Yeah. I try to maintain a certain level of podcast, on a certain level of podcast. Listen to me, my goodness. A certain level of silly, a certain level of intensity, on that podcast for sure. Absolutely. And for those who are not familiar, with the podcast, it's of course a soft spoken. And we talk about sauces. So if there is a particular hot sauce, barbecue sauce, whatever that I really like, I want to go over the top, and make it abundantly clear and say these superlative things about it to really get my point across and hopefully convey some of that excitement. Whether or not the listeners go out and buy the sauce and try it for themselves, if you want to be my guest, fine, God love you. But hey, if you're listening to the show and you enjoy it, then I can sleep well that night for sure.
Yeah. And are you promoted by these sources at all, or it's just sources that you enjoy?
Yeah, we're not promoted. We're not sponsored at all. Not by any of these sauces. This is more or less when one of my co-hosts, when he goes grocery shopping, food shopping during the week, he'll find an interesting one and he'll go and pull it, and that's what we do for that week. And to be very honest with you, Allie, they're not all sauces that I particularly care for either. Hot sauces are okay. Probably out of the universe of hot sauces, maybe 10%, I find to be palatable and acceptable. And they'll tease me about it because I don't particularly care for hot sauces that much. I still like it. I don't like heat for the sake of heat. I think that's silly. I like heat in terms of flavor. So yeah, so they'll torture me a great deal and bring over these ghost pepper sauces and these types of things to make me, turn red and make me uncomfortable in these types of ideas. So yeah, they're not even sauces that I 100% love all the time, but sort of going against contradicting what I said before, some of that, I think a little bit of negativity, if there's a sauce that I really can't stand, I maybe in the same manner, I go over the top to tell people how much I don't like it. And if I can make a corny joke or something like that in the meantime, then that's all the better.
Of course, yeah, to keep those listeners engaged. You managed to trick me. I thought you were really enthusiastic about all of those sauces because you genuinely adored them. Like I've forgotten the name. Is it the Breckman? The ball game?
The Bertman's mustard.
Bertman's mustard, yes. I thought you genuinely, like you were talking about the shape of the bottle, as you always do on your podcast. And I thought you were genuinely passionate about it and the flavor. So it's incredible that the voice acting techniques that you learnt from advertising other products has now seeped into podcasting.
I suppose you're right. Yeah, I never really thought about it that way. And Ali, truth be told, Bertman's mustard, I didn't fool you. Bertman's mustard is truly one of my favorite mustards out there, if not my favorite. So that enthusiasm was very much sincere when I said that. I just want to make that clear. Hashtag not sponsored by Bertman's. However, I would very much like to be. You can just send me a crate of mustard anytime you wish. But at any rate, but yeah, so yeah, I mean, that enthusiasm, of course, that has to convey. I don't know if you listen to the Yellowbird sauces, but those are some very, very hot sauces. And I gave them a good ribbon. I didn't care for some over the others, and I certainly let that know. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That enthusiasm from the advertising, whatever it may be, again, that certainly has to carry over. You have to instill that excitement. The next button or the radio dial is far too close. It's far too convenient. So we want to put up as many roadblocks we can in between that person's hand and the next button or the radio dial or whatever the case may be, whatever they're listening to. And that enthusiasm, to me, is one of the best roadblocks that folks like you and I can come up with.
That is ingenious. I've never thought of it as having that psychology of sort of, it's not driven by fear as such, because fear can cause nervousness, but there's that drive of just don't allow them to skip the button or press the skip button.
Oh. Yeah, right. I mean, you leave them hanging for sure. I mean, and I don't mean that leave them hanging in a negative sense, in a bad sense. But have them hanging on every word. Why not? Yeah. That's what we're doing here. That's the idea behind it. That's the whole point of the program. So if we're going to have a show that is far too easy to hit the next button on, what are we doing?
Yeah, totally. There's no point recording if no one's listening, which is why I never uploaded that way too conversational, way too relaxed podcast that I recorded, because I knew that no one would listen to it, and it was a waste of time of someone else's and mine of editing and posting.
Hey, I mean, if you can make that call, more power to you. I would always be afraid of what could have been, right? That would be my only concern as it relates to all that. Of course, you would know the quality of that podcast certainly better than anyone else. And if you can make that call and make it honestly, I applaud you. If it were me personally, I may throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. You can always take it down afterwards, right?
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, that's the way I look at it. You gotta, the off button, the radio dial, whatever the case may be, is too close and it's too convenient. Certainly for my liking. So we want to make sure that doesn't even come into the listener's brain.
Yeah, totally. It didn't come into my brain when I was listening to your podcasts.
Oh, terrific! Well, thank you so much for that. That means a great deal. Yeah, we really enjoy doing it. We've been doing it for, I want to say, 8 or 9 months now. And this was the brainchild of Adam, one of the co-hosts on the show, and he's really taken it and run with it. I'm convinced that he wanted to do a podcast on his own. God love him. I know he's going to listen to this, so I'm going to chop him up here. I think he wanted to do a podcast on his own, but he's not interesting enough to pull it off. So that's when he roped in me and and another fella, and put together this whole sauce thing. God love him. He's a great guy. He's incredibly organized. He is as far as my podcast is concerned, he's the best guy for the job. So I don't want to sit here and talk bad about him because he's a wonderful man. But honest to goodness, I think that's what happened, and I'm better for it. I'm absolutely better for it because I'm excited as hell about doing podcasts, not only my own, but I'm excited as hell when you Allie, reach out to me. I mean, that was exciting. So I'm certainly better for it, and I thank him for it. But I do like to give him a hard time every once in a while.
Of course, you have to with friends.
Right. It's my job. Exactly.
It's your responsibility for sure. It's right before the podcast. They may hate me for saying this. You called them knuckleheads, but I could hear in your voice that it was just playful. Like you don't actually think they're stupid, but it's that bouncing off of friends.
Oh, of course not. And as a matter of fact, I mean, I'll call them knuckleheads, boneheads. I mean, you name it. I got a million names for those guys, and I don't mean to get syrupy, sweet, bleeding heart here on you. But honest to goodness, those two guys, they're some of the smartest people I ever met. And I mean that in all sincerity. I call them silly names and I tease and I joke around. But those fellas, they are bright. They are some of the brightest fellas that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting.
That is a lovely thing to say about your friends. Were you guys friends before you started podcasting?
As a matter of fact, we were. Yeah. It's an interesting story. And it all stems from a very large retailer, the Home Depot. The Home Depot was pretty much the source of all of this, believe it or not. Not only did I meet Eric and Adam at the Home Depot while we were all working there, I also met my wife there. So Home Depot not only did they provide me for a job for a couple of years, but I found my wife and I found a handful of lifelong friends. And I learned a great deal there too, just about various home improvements, little tricks, if you're painting or laying a floor or whatever the case may be. We all got to be very good friends at the Home Depot. Of course, I got married a couple years ago. So I have believe it or not, of all goofy stories, I have the Home Depot to thank for pretty much where I am right now.
Wow. It sounds like a magical department. Is it a department store?
It is a home improvement store. Yeah. It's, sheet lumber, paint, electric, garden, that type of thing. I know they're big here in the States. I'm not sure about you guys. But yeah, so I have a lot to thank for the good old Home Depot.
It definitely sounds like a magical place that's gifted you so many relationships.
It's certainly something. Yeah, I mean, I learned a great deal. They don't pay well. I mean, let's call it. That's just what it is. It's retail, right? So you're not it's a retail pay grade. Mm-hmm. But as far as the intangibles, I made out like a bandit. Yeah, I made several lifelong friends. Of course, I met my wife. Not to say I'd go back working for them tomorrow, because I got everything I wanted out of them, right?
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I mean, I certainly have lots of credit to those folks, and it was, certainly didn't mean to be that way. Home Depot it's a job, right? It's not somewhere where you meet your friends, or you could, I suppose.
Yeah,
but
never know. If you started working there again, you might make a few more friends, start a new podcast.
Possibly. I think I'm good for one. One is enough for me for now. But yeah, hell, why not? I mean, geez, pick up a part-time gig and a part-time podcast. Why not?
Yeah, for sure. Have you been on anyone else's podcast as a guest before?
No, sir. No, I have not. This is the first one.
Oh, fabulous. Okay. A new experience. I noticed you got a doctor on, was it a doctor, a medical doctor on the Hooters episode?
No. Oh, well, she works in a hospital. I'm not sure if it's, if it's an MD, type position or anything like that. I don't think it is. But her and I used to actually work in a hospital, together. That young lady, Miss Colleen, her and I adjudicated. Now, this is really exciting stuff, Allie, so please bear with me. But we adjudicated claims for auto insurance claims. So we would work in the emergency room, and these poor folks, they would come in after a car accident. Some of them could be in pretty bad shape, and then there's me coming in and asking them about insurance information. So, needless to say, that job didn't last very, very long. I thought that was a very bad taste, just considering the circumstance, But that's how I met that young lady, and she still works for the hospital as of right now for that Hooters wing sauce episode. But yeah, that was a fun episode to do. That was the first guest we've had on our show, as a matter of fact.
Right. I was actually wondering, have you had experience with interviewing people in the past? Because you were able to get Mrs. or Dr. Colleen to be talking amazing throughout the podcast.
No, me personally, I don't have any interview or interviewer experience. No, I honest to goodness, Allie, I do just like chatting with people. I just like talking with people. I'm probably almost to a fault. In my 9 to 5, I mean, I get hollered at because I'm too busy yakking. I want to see how people's, how was the weekend? How's the kids? How's the wife? What's for dinner tonight? What are you doing this weekend? I just like to hear those people's stories. So if that translates to a skill set that speaks to a good interviewer, then so be it. But I will very much tell you that it is just a genuine interest and a concern about people's stories. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm a little weird. Maybe I'm a little goofy. But yeah, I mean, I'll ask questions all day. Yeah, I'm not too proud for that. No way.
Right. Yeah. I don't think that's a weird trait at all. I think that's more human than the average. If you're genuinely interested, because I am as an interviewer. Well, I don't know if I'd call myself an interviewer, but as doing this podcast, I find that I'm fascinated by people's stories, as you are, and it is a very great trait to have. It's driven by love, I think, to be able to, just really understand the person that you're talking with, see what they're going through, whether it's troubles or happy times. When they're telling that story, you're living it with them.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And from a social standpoint, I always try to make it a point to remember, if you've ever read Dale Carnegie or any of his books, but he sums it up really nicely that, if you can remember that, hey, oh hell, I don't know. But if you talk to someone at work and their kid who plays baseball or softball or whatever the case may be, and you go in back at work and you say, hey, how was the ball game on Monday? To me, if someone were to ask me that would endear me to them immediately. Right. I mean, so this person asked me on Friday, how's my boy doing? How's my son? Whatever the case may be. He's following back up on Monday with nothing to gain. He has nothing to gain, nothing to get out of this. And yet he's still asking me about my boy's ball game on Saturday. This fellow must really care. And I'm not looking at it in that sense. I'm not looking at it as trying to, fool somebody into thinking that I care when I really don't. But I just find that to be a really effective way to sort of endear people to you. And it's even better if you sincerely, genuinely care. That just makes it that much easier. But getting back to your original question there, my friend, no, I don't have any formal training when it comes to interviewing people. I think it's just a genuine concern. I don't know, maybe not even concern is the right word, but a genuine care. Just hey, what's going on in your world, man? Different. I guess different strokes for different folks. Maybe I can learn something. Maybe I can help. Who knows? But the only way you can find out is by
just the pure pleasure of conversation. And
most definitely.
You said as well that like this. What was the author's name? Sorry, that you mentioned a moment ago.
Dale Carnegie. Yeah, right. Dale Carnegie. It's a pretty good. The book is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It is a terrific book, and from a podcaster point of view, especially from where you're sitting, Allie, that would be a pretty good book to thumb through, because it sort of just goes on how to handle folks. One point that I found that stuck with me, and I try to employ it every day, is a person's name is the most sweetest word in that language to that person. Their name.
That's so true.
So by that virtue, take it upon yourself to remember that person's name. Because so the next time you see them, they'll be that much more flabbergasted that you remembered their name. And if you can remember whatever their favorite food or how their kiddo's football game went the night before, then that's just gravy. That's just gravy on top. That's just great. But a person's name, and of course there's more points to the book. They don't just focus on that one point, but that's the point that stuck with me the most. Is a person's name is the most sweetest word to that person in that particular language. I found that to be helpful, not only in a podcasting sense, but in a professional sense as well. Like I mentioned, I do insurance work, and when you're selling or when you're talking about it, it's that's important stuff. People like to hear their own name.
Yes, totally. Yeah. But I'll be honest, when I started this podcast and we started recording, because the first time I had seen your name was on this Zoom call, and I remembered it started with T, because your name on Instagram is TJ
Indeed.
Source Spoken. And when we started, I'd forgotten your name. And I was like, oh my God, that is awful. That really is. Not in the sense of the podcast won't sound as slick, but in the sense of how it may come across as disregarding. And I had to check my phone because I remembered it was T-O something, Torey.
Indeed. Yes, sir. Yeah. And maybe that's just because my name is so, I don't care for my name personally. I don't like the name Torey. Everyone calls me TG, so please, of course, feel free to call me TG. And I didn't take any offense to it by all means. But yeah, and if I may impart a little bit of wisdom on you, what I like doing and what helps me remember people's names is, of course, you meet someone for the first time, you reach out your hand. Hi, my name is Torey. And they'll shake your hand. Of course, they'll of course say their name to you. Hi, my name is so and so. At that point, what I like to do is I say their name back to them immediately. Hi, so and so. It's really good to meet you. Whatever the case may be, I look forward to doing a podcast with you. I look forward to doing business with you. It goes from there. But that helps me to establish maybe even the muscle memory of my tongue and my lips saying that person's name, but that helps it stick into my brain moving forward. So if that's helpful to you, please take it, run with it. But I've found that to be incredibly helpful over the years.
Okay, I will remember that. Thank you. That's a clever trick. Or not a trick as such.
Yeah.
A little method. And you were saying... Oh, sorry, carry on.
Oh, no, I was just going to just elaborate on what you were saying. It's a nice little trick. It gets it into your brain. If you make the association of the name between their hairstyle or whether the fact that they have glasses or a beard or whatever, that is certainly a little trick that helps me. And please, I encourage you to use it if it's helpful for you.
Thank you. Yeah. You were saying that the word trick comes across to me. I don't know why, but I've probably seen too many crime movies, but it comes across in the sense of something maleficent. But I don't think it, in this sort of a sense, like you were saying, the trick or the tactic of repeating back something to someone that they told you before, remembering something like about the Suns baseball, and it's not that I can tell that you're a genuine person. You've said yourself that you really care about people's stories. To be able to sit down and read a book that teaches you methods in which to connect with people and understand them further is amazing. The fact that you're using those tactics in a loving way is beautiful.
I sincerely thank you for that. That's going to go. My ego. I won't be able to fit through the door, Allie. But yeah, I mean, it's these little tricks, and I hear what you're saying. That T word, tricks, that can certainly be construed as a negative thing, like I'm pulling the wool over your eyes, or I'm making you think different than what is really going on. I think you really hit the nail on the head. I think tactic would probably be a much better way to describe it, and it sort of gets away from that negative connotation. I think you're absolutely right there.
Thank you. I suppose so. Out of the three of you, which one of you likes sources more?
That is an interesting question. Boy, Adam, we'll start with him. We'll go in alphabetical order, I suppose. Adam, he is a hot sauce guy. He is the hot sauce man. He likes the srirachas. He likes just generally speaking, he likes the hot sauce, and he will rate them far higher than certainly me, and then a lot of times higher than Eric. Me, personally, I'm a horseradish man. I don't know if you like horseradish or not, Allie.
I love horseradish, especially in a burger.
Oh, terrific. I knew you and I would get along great. But yeah, I love horseradish in any way, shape, or form. As a matter of fact, I grow it in my backyard, and I harvest it every spring, and I can't wait for springtime to come around so I can get out there with my bucket and my shovel. But yeah, so I'm definitely a horseradish man. You mix it with sour cream, you mix it with mayonnaise. Sushi, of course, the wasabi. I'm a big sucker for that. So and I'm a big time vinegar guy too. I like vinegar based sauces, which more often than not, a lot of them are going to be vinegar based. There's no question about it. And finally, our friend Eric. He's just sort of all over the place, and I'm sure you can gather that by listening to the show. He's a great guy. He's like the absent-minded professor. But yeah, he's sort of all over the place. Some hot sauces he really likes, some he doesn't. I think he's far too forgiving when it comes to his ratings than certainly me or Adam. I have no problem if a sauce sucks. I have absolutely no problem saying it sucks, and I'll give you every reason as to why it sucks. But Eric, he goes by a different methodology, and that's okay, and that is absolutely okay. But if to answer your question, to make a long story even longer, I would have to say the sauce head of our little group, of our podcast, would have to be Adam. Probably no question about it. I know he makes comments a lot that if we were to go into his house right now, Allie, he probably has 14, 15 bottles of mustard in his refrigerator right now.
Of various types.
Various types, yeah. You got brown, you got spicy, you got Dijon, you got this, that, and the other. So by that virtue, I would have to say that Adam is sauce head numero uno.
That is, when I first stumbled across your Instagram page, I was shocked that a podcast on sauces could even exist, because I have a very limited knowledge of sauces. I know for mustard, specifically, I know American mustard and English mustard. Those are the two mustards I know. And for the possibility of having 14, that is insane.
And that's just mustard. That's not counting hot sauce. That's not counting aiolis. That's not counting anything else. We actually did an episode on English mustard, as a matter of fact.
Oh, I actually missed that one. I'll check that one out afterwards.
Yeah, please do. I believe it was the Coleman's mustard was the English style of mustard, but we did it was a 3-sauce episode with various mustards across the board, and I know for a fact that one of them was English mustard. I can't, but it escapes my mind at the moment. But yeah, tune in, give it a listen. But to be very frank with you here, Ali, I don't know. I'm no chef. Allow me to just be very clear. I am no chef at all. The best thing I know about sauces is how to eat them. To be very fair with you, so I don't want you or your listeners to think that I'm a Michelin star type chef putting together world class dishes, because that's certainly not the case. I know how to eat them, and I know how to talk about them. So of course that's what we do. But in terms of the how they're comprised, or the makeup, that's you're out of my wheelhouse at that point.
Wow. Have you ever made your own sauce?
That's a good question. I made a hollandaise sauce a couple of years ago, and I don't know if you've ever made a hollandaise sauce before, but that's incredibly challenging. And long story short, the meal was awful. I mean, that's just called, the meal was bad. It was a hollandaise sauce, and it was with some seafood. I made it, and with asparagus, and making a hollandaise is very, very tricky. You need a double boiler, and you got to make sure, now, chemically speaking, I'm not sure what's going on, but ultimately you don't want the hollandaise sauce to separate. And needless to say, my hollandaise sauce separated, so we ordered pizza. But that's probably the closest thing to a sauce that a chef would consider a sauce.
Right.
Eric actually makes a. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you carry on. Sorry.
Eric makes a terrific honey mustard sauce, which is really nice. And Adam and Eric and myself and my wife and the various girlfriends and a couple of other buddies, we get together once a week and play board games, card games, in addition to our weekly podcasts, and of course there's a great deal of food that comes along with these card nights, these game nights, and Eric makes a terrific honey mustard his hand in making sauces is probably the it's a tie. Adam and Eric are both very, very talented in the kitchen, so I would have to say that those two guys probably can make one mean sauce, certainly meaner than I can.
Do you know if they've ever tried working together? They could create an ultimate sauce.
That would be something. I think if they could stand each other for long enough in the kitchen, you would have the sauce to end all sauces. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. There's certainly no bad blood between them.
Okay.
But that would be epic. That would be an epic collaboration, and I would pay to see it.
I would pay to see that also. That would be interesting. You could maybe do it live on a podcast as all the chaos ensues.
That would be interesting. As a matter of fact, I'm going to write that down. I got my little notebook here.
No way. That would be interesting. You could be their what's it called? A sous chef.
Something like that. That's what we'll call it for now.
Yeah, it'll do. Wow, that's fantastic. And before this, Adam and Eric, did they have any radio skills before the podcast? Not to my knowledge.
No, I don't think so. No, Eric, both of those guys, they come from technical backgrounds. Their 9-to-5 jobs are very technical in nature. Not to say that that's exclusive to having a radio background, but no, I haven't heard, and I would have heard certainly by now if they had any experience in broadcasting or radio or anything like that. I mean the it works out really nice. The whole dynamic works out really, really nice between us three. Adam he's very technical. He understands he understands the podcast game. He's a full-time podcast listener. So he understands how they operate. He understands the technical side of things. He understands the hosting and all that, the stuff that's just way over my head. That is just way beyond what my level of understanding. And Eric's terrific, of course, too. I think he brings a whole nother flavor to it. We record in his house. So of course that is a huge feather in his cap. And as far as what I bring to the table, I'm not entirely sure yet, but we're still figuring that out.
Right. I felt that with you three. You really do have a great bond with each other. There's great friendship. And Eric, for sure, he seems like, although you two, Adam and you, are very comedic, I feel like Eric is a bit of the comedic relief of the podcast.
I would say so. Yeah, I would certainly agree with you. And it's not done on purpose, which I think can even lend to more of a comedic experience. I don't know if I'm making sense when I say that, but he'll say something that we perceive as funny that he didn't mean as funny, and then to see his reaction, the look on his face just screams, guys, I was being very serious when I said that, and him and I are still carrying on laughing. That just adds, to me at least, that just certainly adds to that comedic effect, and hopefully that translates, over the airwaves while you're listening to the podcast. But yeah, I would agree with you entirely, Ali. I think he's a great addition. I mean, we couldn't do it without him. I mean, the show would not be the show without him, of course. But yeah, I think he provides a great deal of comedy relief, and he certainly keeps us laughing. And we hope that he keeps everyone else laughing too. He's good at it.
Yeah, for sure. It's always great to have that friend in the group that he says something and you'll like look at him for a second and then start laughing, and he's like, "Guys, what?"
Yeah, and then he still can't figure out what's going on. Can't figure out why we're laughing. But I'll be damned if it's not hilarious. And yeah, our friend E, and I think he is the best sport as far as I'm concerned. He's the best sport going, because I'm sure I know you've listened to the show, and I know that we give him a pretty good hard time a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So he's a tremendous sport. He's a good sport, and he still hangs out with us. So hats off to him.
Yes, for sure. A lot of respect to E.
No question about it.
For being the punching bag of your podcast.
God love him. Oh, he's going straight up, Ali. You know what I mean? He's going straight up.
Straight up?
Straight up is right.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, and I'm a bit morbid here, so bear with me. I'll tie this all together. I promise. We tease him and persecute him, in a I don't want to say in a biblical sense, but maybe in a biblical sense. So when my friend does pass on, he's been persecuted so much here on earth by Adam and myself that he's going straight up. He has a one-way ticket straight to heaven because he suffered enough.
Oh, poor Eric. Well, good for him in the end, but taking a beat.
He's going straight up. Yeah, don't worry about him. He's in good shape.
What about you two, though? Are you two all right?
I suppose. I certainly hope so. Boy, I doubt myself sometimes. I'm a wretched mess, Ali. I'll be the first to admit it. But you got to admit it. That's the first step.
I'm sure part of us, in every single person, has that sort of wretched, as you call it, a wretched mess inside of them. But almost all of humanity is able to put on a mask and smile and not show that wretched mess out of kindness for others.
Yeah, boy, yeah. And that flips, boy, that's certainly not good. But yeah, I mean, I can only hope that I can go as I'm going to go as straight up as Eric, because he is going to be like a lightning bolt, straight up.
Oh, Eric, you called him the absent-minded professor earlier. Is he like very intelligent in your eyes? Does he have a lot?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, yeah, both of those guys, they bring a lot to the table, both in a podcast sense and just with being a good dude, just with being a good dude. But yeah, I think the absent-minded professor, I think, is a great way to describe him. He's brilliant. I mean, there's no question about it. He's an absolute brilliant man. But there are some things that, personally I would question, hey, it's his house, not mine, whatever the case may be. I don't know. But that's why I think the absent-minded professor is a good moniker for our friend, because he's brilliant. And if he just had that little touch of organization, he could be dangerous.
A little touch of organization. He could be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. He could be dangerous.
That sounds like creating a nuclear bomb.
I mean, maybe not quite in the sense like an evil genius, but maybe working his way up. Yeah.
Right. So like very business minded. He could be if he had the organization.
Yeah. If he had the organization, he certainly has the brains and the wits, a little bit more organization, and he could be, he could be a dangerous individual. Ooh. I mean, and Allie, I mean, and I certainly don't mean that disparagingly. I say the same thing about myself.
Yes.
I say, if I only had a brain, I would be dangerous. So Eric's like 10 steps ahead of me.
I think you have a brain. You have to give yourself some credit. You've created this podcast. You've worked in commercials in the past, which is further than a lot of people nowadays, especially for Jimmy Buffett, was the name?
Yeah, Jimmy Buffett. Yeah, go ahead and look him up on Spotify after it's all said and done. I'll be curious as to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, I'll listen to him straight after this, after I've hung up the call. You mentioned earlier you worked in Home Depot, and I was wondering, because in the UK we have a minimum wage, and I think it's around £6. Do you have a minimum wage in America?
Indeed, we do. Yes, we have a minimum wage here in the States. I want to say, don't quote me on this here, Allie, but I think I want to say it's about $9-10 an hour, maybe, I think. From what I understand, it's a state by state type deal. So, I live in Pennsylvania, of course, on eastern side of the United States. It's going to be far different than the minimum wage, say like in Montana, or even like say like Southern California. That minimum wage is going to be far higher, just because the cost to live out there is just crazy.
I get the sense that America is sort of like built up of mini countries in a way, because each state seems to have its own culture, its own behavior, even its own accent, and it's all based around the American accent, but they all seem to have these specific ways of being. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's a really great way to describe it. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was born and raised in Western Pennsylvania, specifically Pittsburgh, in right outside of the city. I can see the skyscrapers from my front yard. So just to give you an idea as to how close I am to the city. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Here in Western Pennsylvania, they call guys like me yinzers, if you're curious. And some folks take that as a derogatory term. Other folks don't. I don't care. You have to try a lot harder to offend me with a silly name like that. But yeah, so a lot of people like that, they would refer to me as a yinzer. And just so you know, if you're curious, that's spelled YINZ or Z, as you guys like to call it, yin. So yins, and they call us yinzers because that is a very popular word. Whereas, and you may be familiar with how the South the American South, they use the term y'all, right? You've heard that before, Y-A-L-L. Are y'all coming to the show tonight? Are y'all coming? You've heard that, right?
I actually use it myself, yeah.
Okay, good. So yins is the Western Pennsylvania equivalent to y'all. So me being a Pittsburgher, a Western Pennsylvanian, instead of me saying, hey, y'all coming to whatever the game, I would say, hey, are yins coming out to dinner? What are yins doing tonight? So that's why they call me a yinzer, because that's a term that we use a lot in replace of a y'all or a you all, that type of idea. So yeah, and if I were to go to Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Arizona, whatever, and I say yin, people look at me, like I got a bag on my head. People don't know what to think. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I can't speak to any of the other colloquialisms that are in and around the States. It's a big place over here. But yeah, and there's actually, and I can send you the link if you'd like, Allie. But there's an entire glossary, an entire encyclopedia of words and phrases that we use here in Western Pennsylvania, that if I were to go and rap on my neighbor's door and ask him, hey, Jinzi, here you go, here's one for you. Did Jinzi jeet yet? What the hell did you just say?
Like Japanese.
Yeah, right. But what I'm asking there, did you guys eat yet? You want to go out and grab a bite? Essentially is what I'm asking. And so I'll send you the link after we're all said and done, because I find this stuff to be very, very interesting.
Sure.
But yeah, there's an entire
website for listeners.
It's the way Pittsburghese is the lingo, I guess, that you would call it, generally speaking, Pittsburghese. But I'm sure if you were to go on to Google or, whatever search engine you like, and type in Pittsburghese, I'm sure that a list would come up of those different types of phrasings and sayings, if you so desire.
Yeah, I'd love to have a look at that. That's fascinating. So is there a chance that there's a specific state in the USA that you could travel to that you wouldn't be able to understand people due to how different their way of speaking is?
Probably the American Deep South. That would probably be my biggest challenge. And I've been to Florida a couple of times. I've been to Georgia a couple of times, and I certainly don't mean to speak bad about folks, from the American South. They're great people. They're the salt of the earth, of course. But there is, and maybe it's not even so much the words that they say that I have an issue with. I think a lot of times it's the cadence that I find issue with, because everything is, the joke is, right, you go down to the American South, everything slows down, right? You come up north, us Yankees, as they call us, us guys up north, everything's quick. Everything's quick. We talk quick, we work quick, we do this. It's all very fast. When you come down to the American South, things change a little bit. Everyone takes things a little bit slower, from what I understand. And, that's the stereotype. Of course, that's the joke. And it's the cadence that I have a hard time, maybe not dealing with, but listening to. It's sort of a, hey, let's get to the point, let's move. But that would probably be the what I would struggle with the most. That particular accent, in America is what I would struggle with probably more than most.
Right.
Apparently, when you get to the Midwest, if you get into Ohio and, in those states over there, Indiana, from what I understand, from a radio point of view or a broadcasting point of view, that particular accent right in the heart of America, right in the Midwest of America, is ideal for radio and broadcasting and those types of things, which I found to be very, very interesting, which I don't know what makes it different. But I've certainly heard that in the past.
That's fascinating. That through different states, it's hard to understand one another, or specific states. Did you ever find that you had to slow yourself down for radio because of how fast you spoke?
Yes. Yes, I do. And I try to make it a point to remember to slow down. This isn't a race. And getting back to the idea, we're putting another roadblock in between that person's hand and that next button or that radio dial or whatever the case may be. So a nice big roadblock, of course, is understanding what the heck you are saying. So yes, I struggle with it, Ali. I'll be very frank with you. I struggle with it. I have to remember to slow down and speak clearly, because if I'm not careful, I'll just start zipping right through it.
I wouldn't have ever expected that, because you seem to have a very good control over the speed, the tone, the diction, all aspects that create an ideal voice for radio or podcasts such as this. And I wouldn't have ever expected it's something that you struggled with.
Wow. Yeah. I sincerely appreciate that. Yeah, no question about it. It is a struggle. Yeah. I don't want to toot my own horn, and it's like watching Tiger Woods play golf. You know what I mean? He makes it look so easy, right? Anyone can do it. So I don't want to come off like that. I don't want to make it sound, that I'm conceited or anything like that, because it's taken a great deal of work, to remember and, clobber that into my brain that, slow down. And I'll be frank with you, Ali, and I know we've mentioned this on podcasts in the past, but a couple beers helped me a great deal.
Wow, that's interesting. Because
yeah. So if it works out that I can have, go ahead.
So do you drink before podcasting? Not heavily, of course, but 1 or 2 beers?
Usually before and during. Yeah. I mean, if I can manage it, because we usually record on Thursday nights. And my 9 to 5 job is, of course, Monday through Friday, right? I'm a working stiff just like everybody else. And I do not drink on school nights. Absolutely not. I do not touch a drop of alcohol on school nights. So Thursday night, of course, that would be a school night, having to work the following. I say school nights, I mean work nights, but you know what I mean.
Right. Okay.
And so if I'm off the following day, that Friday, or we have to reschedule for a weekend or whatever the case may be, I will absolutely, positively be having a couple of beers, both before and during. And I think it helps sort of the slowness, or keeping it slow. I'm not drinking now, Ali. I can assure you, I don't drink when the sun's out either.
Okay. Understandable. Yeah, it's 11 a.m. there for you now. So
indeed, yeah. It's I roll out of bed, snap open a beer. Why not? I'm teasing. But yeah. I mean, so the beer, I think it helps me slow down, and it helps me be a little bit silly, be a little bit goofy, and think of things I may not have thought about in the past.
Yeah, totally. And unleashing that creativity that, because of our inhibitions and like certain possibly stresses as well in life, that just having a beer can allow us to go into our mind and explore it. I think that's the same sort of method that Joe Rogan uses when he smokes weed on his podcast. That it allows him to see things from a different perspective, which I suppose is what beers do for you.
Yeah. I just sort of get loose. I sort of get loose. I get a little silly. And to your point, the inhibitions are sort of gone. So something that crossed my mind that like, oh, that's stupid, I'm not going to say that. And, if I got a couple of beers in me, I let it rip, and see what happens.
Yeah, it probably turns out for the better as well. Is there a specific podcast that you can remember that you drank during?
Oh, boy. To be very honest with you, Ali, I couldn't pick one out of the lineup without having a wee tiny listen to it. But I can assure you that out of the however many episodes there are, I want to say there's 14 or 15 out now, probably 3 or 4 of those are
are ones that I was drinking throughout. And I know it's brought up in conversation. I know that over the course of the podcast. I'm sorry I can't answer your question to the best of my ability, but I can tell you they're there for certain.
No worries at all. It just means I'll have to listen to more podcasts to hunt down the ones we've had a drink.
There you have it. That sounds great to me.
Great. This has been really fun. I'm going to end it here.
Okay. Yeah, most definitely. Allie, again, I want to make it very, very clear to you that I sincerely appreciated your time here this morning and your afternoon. It means a great deal to me. I thank you so much for reaching out to me. Again, when you reached out to me on Friday, you absolutely made my night. You made my weekend. And I just wanted to make that really clear to you. And I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I've really been looking forward to this podcast, and it passed all of my expectations. So thank you.
Outstanding. Terrific. That is great news. When would this be airing?
Tonight.
Oh, wow.
I don't edit this podcast at all, apart from the little trailers that I put on Instagram.
Okay. So wow. Well, I will be tuning in for sure. And again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. To any listeners out there, please check out Torey's podcast. It's called Sauce Spoken. That's SAUCE Spoken. Thank you, and
that's
goodbye.
Right. Yeah. Thank you again.